Okay, good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, May 12th, 2021, and we're going to get started with our pre-market analysis here. Pretty crazy sell-off since the highs that we made on May 7th, and I'm sorry, what was that, on May 10th? And that was the morning that we saw on our weekly and our daily some pretty clear bearish signals. So the sell-off, looking at it from that perspective, made sense. And so let's jump to our high time frames here and see what everything is saying. Now, our quarterly, again, I don't know why I have this drawn as if it's a divergence. I'm just showing that there is no divergence. So no divergence on the 3-month. Looking very, very strong still. The monthly still looks very strong with really no divergence. No indications of exhaustion in the move just yet. But when we get to the weekly, that's where we saw when the weekly closed on Friday of last week, we got the first indication of some exhaustion in the market. And so I'm telling you, on Friday afternoon, when I looked at the chart and I saw this, I kind of thought, well, we have a pretty bullish bar here because of this huge wick to the downside, but we're starting to get a clear indication of some exhaustion here. And so when we did sell off this week, it's not quite unexpected, like I said. Now, what I'm noticing here is typically if you have a wick to the downside like this, if the bulls in this case could hold above the low of that wick, then this type of bullish scenario could end up playing out. They hold the low there at 41.20.50 and then continue up. But what happened here, you can see now our weekly candle broke the low of the previous weekly candle. Not only that, it's a bearish engulfing candle. So this candle now is a bearish candle engulfing all of the price action of last week. So things do not look too pretty. That's why last night I put in the chat that things are just not looking too good right now. That doesn't mean that it won't just turn around now, but overall, things are looking pretty bearish here on our weekly and our daily charts here. So we go to our daily. Again, on the 10th, on the morning of, so on Monday, when we looked at the candle that closed on Friday, we had our first indication of bearishness. So we had a weekly and a daily indication of bearishness. And remember, when our higher time frames are showing bear signals, although it might be a counter trend, that could mean a correction in the market of 200 to 300 points. So if you look back to some of the previous corrections, the major corrections here, 38.50 to 36.50, 200 points, 39.40 to 37.13. So, over 200 points. This guy even 39.70 to 38.40, over 100 points. And so this pullback right now, which is now just over 100 points, is making sense. And we could even see a deeper pullback. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to bounce and maybe come up and test 85.50 today, which was the previous daily high, and then continue. But so far, things look super, super bearish here. And from this daily perspective right now, there are really no clues as far as what could potentially happen next here. You can see that we had a huge wick to the downside on this candle, and we've already broken the low of that wick. So now whatever bullish potential case you could make from that candle is now over with. We've broken the wick to the downside. Now remember back to this, we were talking yesterday about technically you could argue that because when we were down here on price, our RVI was up here and now we're getting divergence. So if you did want to stick with that argument, you can see that we have all the way down to 56.50 for the potential, quote, bullish divergence to still hold. I'm not someone to really do things like that, but it is an argument that could be made. Rufat is saying today's daily candle is not done yet. Maybe it will have a long wick too. Yeah, so the daily candle, if we look at it right now, remember right now we have all day for this to actually form. So we're not really looking at signals right now off that, but off the previous candle, we had a huge wick to the downside, more than 50%. They closed bearish on it for sure, but we had this huge, wick to the downside, and we've already broken it. So there's really not a big bullish case. Now, Rufat's saying that this candle could have a long wick as well, so we could be down here right now and then end up pushing all the way up to break 48, 41.85.50 here, and then we'd have this gigantic wick down here, or at least we'd have a pretty decent wick here because we did open right up here, so it would be like a wick from 41.03 to 41.44, and then potentially the rest of the candle could be up here. Again, it's not worth it to even play out scenarios. I'm not a scenario guy. I like to just take things as they come. So the daily right now still looks pretty bearish, and there's no really clear bullish divergence unless you want to argue again that from this low at 56.50 we could make the argument, which is not something I'd like to do. We are right at the 60 level on RVI, and again they could come all the way to 56.50, and if 56.50 held, you could make that argument for bullish divergence, but not something I'm in love with doing. So right now on the 4-hour, what I noticed just earlier was that we had a little bit of a bullish divergence on the pullback. So we had this pretty nice sell-off to 0375 yesterday, and in the overnight we pulled back right into these two CPs right around 4110, and when we did that we got a bullish divergence. So a 4-hour bullish divergence off of two major CPs here, not a bad bullish indication, but as everyone saw just around 5:30 this morning, there was a huge 30-point sell-off. We broke all of that, and now we're kind of in the same scenario that we were looking at earlier, which is things look pretty bearish here. And this 4-hour candle has about 45 minutes before it closes, so I'm not going to really do anything. There's been a lot of quick moves, so you're sitting and things are a little slow, and then things move 5, 10, 20 points in a few seconds. So I don't want to say too much about the current 4-hour candle, but this previous setup was bullish and it's been negated. So currently looking fairly bearish here on the 4-hour. Now if the 4-hour closed and we have this lower low but a higher low on RVI, you would then have another potential bullish indication. But I think we're going to have to stick to our shorter time frame charts to get a better picture for right now. So we have our final, what I call my high time frame, which is our 60-minute. It's the shortest time frame that I consider in my high time frame range. And currently, you have that bullish indication off the major low from yesterday. And then on the pullback here, we did not get the same indication as the 4-hour. And currently, there's really you could argue there's kind of this push to lower low and a push to a higher low on RVI. So from a 4-hour and a 1-hour perspective, you could make the argument for a potential bullish indication, but we're in a very strong sell-off. We had multiple time frame, including the weekly and the daily, bearish off the all-time high, which typically leads to a 200-point push down and a good move. And then we do have this bearish indication off of the high that we made around 47 in the overnight. So rather than go counter trend and say that we now have a bullish case, I'm still looking for potential bearish push here. But if every time frame gives us a bullish indication off these lows, we might expect a little bit of a bounce, and that bounce again could be anywhere from 5 or 10 points to maybe 20 or 30. But again, we'll have to kind of watch as we go here. So our high time frames, once again, the super high time frames are quarterly and our monthly. Really no signs of exhaustion, but then we get to weekly and daily and we have clear signs of exhaustion, and we've got over 100-point pullback so far. when we get to our 4-hour and our 1-hour, we are getting some indications of some bullish kind of signals and off the lows. So we could potentially see just a little bit of a bounce. Remember, we got the signal here at 03 and it bounced to 54. So a 50-point bounce, and I guess 50 points in this market is not that much. I mean, we did this in just a few hours. So let's go to our intermediate time frames and see what they're saying off the lows here. And just quickly, I just realized here, you can see how this is coming down lower, but we did come up and push higher here. So something I just saw in my eyes on the 1 minute. But let's pull the 10-minute up here, or the 30-minute, and just kind of see what's going on. And 30-minute, you can see definitely there was the same bearish signal that we saw on the 60-minute off that high from earlier. But off the lows, you could definitely argue that you have bullish divergences here. All right, so right here, a nice push down in price, but a push up on RVI. And so we do have the 4-hour, the 1-hour, and the 30-minute giving us some bullish indications on these sell-offs. But remember, it's just for a small bounce. We're not talking about a complete reversal. So I don't know if that's going to be too useful for an actual trade setup. And remember, the reason that we're doing these every morning, I'm going to bring this up probably every time I do this, is to see if we get a clear picture for a move. Because some mornings we will get a nice clear picture and we'll be able to play that. And we have plenty of times in the past, although I would argue the last week or two has been a little bit more fuzzy on some mornings, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And so currently we have some pretty nice bullish indications off the lows, but we're also kind of in a move that we expect could go another 100 points south. And so because our daily and our weekly are not showing any signs of a bounce from here, I would expect that maybe we get, again, one of these little pushes, a little 10, 20, 30, 40 point push, and then we continue in the direction of the trend. So 10-minute is kind of getting down to just some of the smaller moves now, but on our 10-minute, we definitely still had the push to make that low on that huge 30-point sell-off at 5:30 this morning, and a higher low on RVI. So we've already bounced from 95 to 41.25. We got 30 points out of it. That could be all we get because of the current context of the market. But I am noticing I drew in this triangle here when I got to the screens this morning, and we did break down, but we came back up and closed above it and are holding above this triangle here. So just kind of interesting. Not really anything I'm going to necessarily trade at the moment, but just kind of an observation. And so let me just kind of do a quick summary here. I do want to pull up the 3-minute really quickly here just to show you the bearish indication we got off the push up to the KP here. Really clear bearish signal off of that 26 area just after the bounce off the CP this morning. And so this sell-off at the moment makes a lot of sense right off the KP. And let me just kind of review here. We've got pretty bearish signals on our high time frame from the daily and the weekly. Our 4-hour and our hourly and our 30-minute and our 10-minute do show some bullishness off of the lows. And you can see that when we made these lows, we definitely get a pretty good response, but then the bears just jump back in and continue down. So the bullish indication that we did get here off 95.50 in the pre-market, this push that we currently got could be all that we get here. And so you can see they've tried to push, they petered out, and then here we've got this bearish kind of situation, at least from that 3-minute perspective, off of the KP up here at 26.25. And then you can see, even this move up, the first move up, we got some bearish indications here. So we're going to have to, unfortunately, this morning kind of play this level by level just like yesterday and signal by signal, because I don't have anything too compelling for a specific move. And as we get closer to the open, what we could do is, again, look at our 3-minute, our 1-minute, and our 5/12 and pick up a move. Like, it might not be the overall trend for the day, but we could definitely get into a trade in the direction just out of the open. And that's basically if we do see a nice setup. I am noticing there's a decent bullish setup off of this double bottom on number of time frames. So the 5/12, the 1-minute, both have a bullish indication from this 1350, and we're now getting a little bit of a bounce. So if we get this type of setup just before the open, we could go ahead and try it. Now we're starting to get the counter indication at the moment, and so that might be as far as the bounce actually gets. Now I see some people are asking some questions, wondering your perspective about the news. Do you think the news like CPI data this morning made that 30-point drop? A lot of times you're going to see an indication from a technical standpoint of a move, and then the news is going to hit, and then the move is going to happen. And so what I think news does is it just makes the move maybe a little more busy, because you have a lot of people trading the news. So I think the move was probably in the books to actually sell off from that level, but maybe it got a little bit more protracted because the news came out. And then what you have is not necessarily, you just kind of have so many people watching the news and trading it that you get maybe a little bit more of a sell-off. You also have bots that are programmed and they get news. The split second that kind of news comes out, the bots are getting that information and potentially making the move just a little bit bigger than normal. But even going back to, if you guys remember, just a few weeks ago, there was a huge sell-off at 5:30 in the morning, and everyone said it was because of the news, but we saw in the charts that there was a really clear high time frame indication of a sell-off from that level. It was 41.71 if I remember correctly.